The first sign that my birthday dinner was not really a birthday dinner was my mother's face. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't watching me. She was watching the black folder beside my grandfather's plate like it had already been stolen from her. My brother Preston had ordered champagne before anyone announced anything. That was the second sign. And when my grandfather finally pushed that folder across the table, my mother whispered something so quietly I almost missed it. No, not him. My brother heard it too, and he smiled like he had been waiting for her to finally say it. 1 hour later, she would stand up in front of lawyers, business partners, and my entire family, and try to erase me with one sentence. But what she didn't know was that my grandfather had invited those witnesses for a reason. My name is Ethan Caldwell, and for most of my life, I was the second son who didn't matter. When Preston crashed his first car, my mother cried because her baby could have died. When I came home from a warehouse emergency with a split eyebrow and blood on my shirt, she looked at me and said, "Don't bleed on the carpet." That was Caroline Caldwell as a mother. One son was precious, the other was useful. My grandfather, Victor Caldwell, built Caldwell Logistics from nothing. 40 years, no shortcuts, no apologies. By the time I was old enough to understand money, Victor Caldwell's name already meant contracts, respect, and power in our city. I started working at Caldwell Logistics when I was 19, not as an executive son, as a floor coordinator making $14 an hour. Victor's idea. He told me, "You want to understand this company? You start where it breathes." So I did. I spent 8 years learning every broken corner of that business. I renegotiated a shipping contract that saved us $300,000 in 1 year. I covered Preston's failures quietly, more times than I can count, because every time Preston touched something, it cracked. The worst part was that Preston knew it. He used to call me warehouse boy at family dinners, even after I was managing accounts bigger than anything he had ever touched. One Christmas, he raised his glass and said, "To Ethan, the only Caldwell who knows where the loading dock is." Everyone laughed. My mother laughed the loudest. 2 weeks before my birthday, something shifted. Caroline called me 3 times in 4 days, asking casual questions that weren't casual at all. "Has your grandfather talked to you about the future of the company? Has he mentioned any changes to his will? Have you signed any documents lately?" The third call ended with 10 seconds of silence. I thought she had hung up. Then I heard her whisper to someone in the room with her, "He still doesn't know." Before I could ask what that meant, the line went dead. I told her nothing, because there was nothing to tell. Not yet. Then Preston started acting like someone had already promised him something. He walked into the office wearing a new watch, slapped my shoulder and said, "Try not to look too surprised at dinner." I asked what that meant. He smiled. "Some people are born for certain rooms, Ethan. Some people just work in them." But I noticed Preston started hovering around Victor's office when he thought no one was watching. Then I caught a phone call I wasn't supposed to hear. Caroline's voice was tight and controlled. "If he does it tonight, I'll say it in front of everyone. I don't care who's in that room." The voice on the other end was male, older, and when she hung up, I watched her delete the call before she noticed me standing there. I didn't know what she meant. I filed it away. The night before my birthday, Victor called me into his study. He sat behind his desk with 2 glasses of bourbon and a folder he didn't open. "You've been loyal to this company," he said. "More loyal than people who had every reason to be." I asked him what he meant. He didn't answer directly. He said, "Tomorrow night is going to be complicated. Stay calm no matter what happens." I should have asked more questions. I didn't. Victor booked a private room at the most expensive restaurant in the city, not a family dinner. There was a lawyer I didn't recognize, 2 of the company's senior business partners, 3 board members, and then, off to the side, visibly overdressed and visibly tense, Caroline and Preston. Preston kept checking his phone. Caroline kept watching Victor's hands. Preston had ordered champagne before dessert. That bothered me. Nobody had announced anything yet, but he was already celebrating. Caroline kept one hand on her purse the entire night, like there was something inside it she was ready to use. Victor saw it too. He didn't say a word. Before Victor spoke, the lawyer placed a small recorder beside the black folder. "For the record," he said, "the business portion of this meeting is being documented." Nobody objected. Caroline was too busy watching the folder. When the main course was cleared, Victor stood up. Victor didn't make a long speech. He looked at Preston first, then at my mother, then at me, and he said, "A company should never go to the person who wants it the loudest. It should go to the person who kept it alive when no one was clapping." Then the lawyer slid the folder toward me. Control of Caldwell Logistics. The full $5 million operation. Effective immediately. I heard Preston's chair scrape the floor. I heard Caroline set down her wine glass harder than she meant to. I signed the documents. The partners shook my hand. Victor sat back down and calmly poured himself more water. For the next hour, everyone pretended this was still a celebration. Preston barely touched his food. Caroline didn't touch hers at all. She just kept staring at the folder in front of me like it was sitting on her side of the table by mistake. Then Victor lifted his glass and said, "To the future of Caldwell Logistics." That was when Caroline finally stood up. Caroline stood up. She didn't shout at first. She spoke in that controlled voice she uses when she's humiliating someone and trying to look civilized doing it. She said the transfer wasn't legitimate. She said I had no legal right to this company. She said there was something everyone in that room deserved to know. Preston reached into his jacket like he had been waiting for his cue. He pulled out a folded DNA test. The page was already highlighted, already marked, already prepared. That was the moment I understood. My mother wasn't confessing, she was performing. And then Caroline said it. Ethan is not Victor's grandson. He is not a Caldwell by blood. And this company should never have been offered to him. Out loud, in front of the lawyer, the partners, the board members, and the waitstaff who had stopped moving near the door. One of the waiters lowered his eyes. One of the board members stopped chewing, and Preston leaned back in his chair with the smallest smile on his face. Not shock, satisfaction. The room went quiet the way rooms go quiet when something irreversible just happened. I felt the floor go unstable under me. Not because I didn't know how to handle hard news, I did, but because of where she said it, because of who was in that room, because she looked at me like she had been waiting years to pull that pin, and she finally had a reason big enough to justify it. Preston smiled. He actually smiled. I looked at Victor. Victor was still sitting down. He hadn't moved. He was looking at Caroline the way a surgeon looks at a patient who just made the wrong incision on themselves. "I know," Victor said. 2 words. Quiet. Absolute. He looked at Caroline and said it again. "I've known for a long time." Caroline's mouth opened, but no sound came out. That was the first time in my life I saw my mother lose control of a room. She had expected Victor to look at me with disgust. Instead, he looked at her like she had just proven every ugly thing he already believed. The room got even quieter, which I didn't think was possible. Victor explained, not defensively, methodically. He said that when my father, David Caldwell, was still alive, David had come to him. David had told Victor the truth about my biological parentage. And David had told Victor something else. He chose me, fully, completely. I was his son in every way that mattered and in every way that the law recognized. Then Victor reached into the folder, the one the lawyer had brought, and pulled out an envelope. He said David left a letter, years ago, sealed, notarized, and held by his attorneys with instructions to deliver it on this specific occasion. He handed it to me across the table. Caroline sat down. I didn't open the letter in front of everyone, but I read it that night, alone in my car, in the parking garage, with the engine off. And my father, David Caldwell, the man who raised me, who came to every school event and drove me to every early morning shift and never once made me feel like a guest in his family, had written one paragraph that I will never repeat to anyone. But the last line was, "Blood is a starting point. A father is a decision. I decided every single day. Caroline's weapon backfired, emotionally, but she wasn't done. The next morning, there was a sealed envelope on my new desk. No name. Inside was a flash drive and a note with 6 words. Check the invoices Preston approved. I didn't know who left it, but whoever it was had been waiting for me to get access. Victor suggested I conduct a thorough audit before making any operational changes. His tone made it clear this wasn't a casual suggestion. What the accountant found in the first 2 weeks made me sit down in my office chair and stay there for a long time. It wasn't one mistake, it was a system. Fake consulting invoices. Marketing retainers for campaigns that never existed. Emergency vendor payments to companies with no employees. 3 signatures from Preston, 2 approvals from Carolyn, and a trail of money routed through accounts designed to disappear. The total was over $430,000. But it went further. Some of those transfers, routed through 2 additional accounts, led to payments made to a man named Grant Holloway. I didn't know who Grant Holloway was. Not yet. Victor told me. Grant Holloway was my biological father, and Carolyn had been paying him to stay out of our lives for years. Preston helped structure the payments through the company's accounts to make them invisible. One recovered email from Carolyn to Preston was only 2 sentences. Keep Grant quiet until after the dinner. If Victor humiliates you, I'll use what I kept. That was when I understood the DNA test had never been a secret. It had been ammunition. They had been using Caldwell Logistics as a personal fund. They had been stealing. Grant Holloway showed up at my office on a Thursday afternoon without an appointment. 55 years old, expensive watch, worn shoes. The combination of a man who used to have money and spent the rest of his time pretending. He sat across from my desk and explained who he was with no apology and no warmth. Then he looked at the framed photo of my father on my desk and laughed. Must have been strange, he said, being raised by the man your mother fooled. That was the first time I wanted to hit him. Not because he was my biological father, because in the first 3 minutes of knowing me, he had already tried to sell me my own pain. Then he slid a number across my desk. $250,000. He called it a family settlement. I called it what it was, a ransom note. I let him finish. Then I told him that everything he said in this room was being recorded with his knowledge, per a notice posted at the building entrance that he had walked past and ignored. He left without another word. I forwarded the recording to our attorney before the elevator reached the lobby. The calls started that weekend. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, friends of my mother's, one of the board members' assistants. Caroline and Preston were telling everyone that I had manipulated an old man into handing over a company that belonged to the family, that Victor had been deceived, that the transfer wasn't legitimate, that I had never been a real Caldwell, and everyone knew it. An uncle called me and told me I should think about whether this was worth it. A family friend sent me a message saying, "Blood is blood, Ethan." My aunt texted me, "Maybe your mother was wrong to say it publicly, but she was right. Blood matters." This was the same aunt who borrowed $18,000 from my grandfather and never paid it back. Suddenly, everyone cared about blood, especially the people who had been living off ours. One of the business partners started quietly asking questions about whether the transfer was contestable. Then, someone sent me a screenshot. Preston had posted a photo from the birthday dinner. No caption, just a picture of me holding the company folder. Under it, one comment from his friend said, "Guess anyone can become family if the check is big enough." Preston liked it. For 2 weeks, I said nothing publicly. I handled it privately. I lost sleep. I doubted myself in the moments I'm most ashamed of. Late at night, alone, when the noise is loudest and the certainty is weakest. And then, Victor called. He told me to stop defending myself to people who had already decided. He said, "You don't argue in front of a jury that was bought before the trial started. You changed the venue." He told me to read my father's full letter, the complete one, the one with the legal addendum I hadn't yet processed. The full letter had one final page I hadn't fully understood the first time. It wasn't emotional, it was legal. And somehow, that made it colder. There was a paragraph about the family trust, fraud, blackmail, defamation, unauthorized disclosure of private family information. I read it 3 times and still didn't fully understand what Victor had built into those documents. So I called him. He answered before the second ring. I asked, "What is this?" Victor said, "Something your mother is going to understand very soon." Victor convened a formal meeting. The full board, the legal team, 3 senior partners, and, at Victor's specific request, several key family members, including the relatives Caroline had called during the smear campaign. Caroline walked into the boardroom wearing white. That was the kind of woman she was. Even when she was guilty, she dressed like the victim. Preston came in behind her, jaw tight, still trying to look rich. Grant didn't come. His lawyer did. I stood at the front of that room and I laid it out. The restaurant recording from my birthday dinner, Caroline's statement, captured by the recorder the lawyer had placed on the table before the transfer. Grant's visit to my office came next. The recording, the transcript. His voice filled the boardroom when he said the word arrangement. That was the first time Preston stopped looking at me. Then came the audit, the shell company, the $430,000, the payments to Grant Holloway, the 2 accounts Preston used to route the transfers. By the time the 3rd fake invoice appeared on the screen, Preston's face had gone gray. Caroline stared at the table through the restaurant recording. She did not move when Grant's voice filled the room. But when the 3rd fake invoice appeared on the screen, she finally whispered, "Turn it off." Victor didn't even look at her. He said, "No, you wanted witnesses. Now you have them." Preston's direct authorization on 3 of the fake invoices, his signature, dated, verified. Caroline's role in structuring the original payments and her knowledge of the fraud, confirmed through internal email records we'd recovered. Then our senior accountant stood up. She was the one who had left the flash drive on my desk. She said Preston had threatened to fire her if she ever questioned the invoices. Then she looked at my mother and said, "But you approved them first." Then I read my father's letter, not the personal paragraph, the legal one, the one that explained why a man who knew the truth still chose to be my father in front of every institution that mattered. Preston stood up so fast his chair hit the wall. "She told me to do it," he said. Caroline turned to him like he had slapped her. "Preston," he pointed at her, "you said he would never get control. You said Grandpa would choose me." The room went silent again. Not because of me this time, because Caroline had finally met the son she raised, a son exactly like her. Victor thanked everyone for attending. The legal team took over. The consequences did not arrive like thunder. They arrived like locks clicking shut. Preston lost access to the family trust first. Then his fake advisory position disappeared. Then the civil claim landed. Then the people who used to laugh at his jokes stopped answering his calls. The city did what cities always do when a rich fraud gets exposed. It pretended it had never liked him. Grant tried one more time. He contacted a local reporter. The reporter called our legal team for comment. By the end of the week, Grant had a cease and desist letter, a pending civil claim, and no one willing to print his story. The man who wanted to sell my name couldn't even give it away. But Caroline's punishment was the one people still talk about. 2 months later, I saw her one last time. Not at a restaurant, not at a family event. In the driveway of the house she used to call hers. 2 movers were carrying her white sofa through the front door. Preston was standing beside his car, screaming into his phone that she had ruined his life. Caroline saw me, and for 1 second, I think she thought I had come to save her. I hadn't. I had only come to collect company documents she still refused to return. She reached for Preston's arm. He pulled away. "Don't touch me," he said. "You should have kept your mouth shut." Then he got in his car and left her standing in the driveway. She had burned one son to protect the other. And the son she protected left her in the ashes. The final twist came from Victor himself. After everything was over, I asked him if he knew Caroline would expose the secret at dinner. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I knew she had the weapon. I wanted to see if she would use it. That was when he told me the truth. The company transfer had been real. The birthday dinner had been real. But the guest list was not random. The lawyer, the board members, the business partners, they were there because Caroline needed witnesses to destroy me, and Victor needed witnesses to destroy her. Caroline thought she was using that room to prove I wasn't family. Instead, she used that room to sign away everything she had left. 3 months later, Caroline sent me a handwritten letter. Not an apology, a performance. She wrote that I had humiliated her, that I had destroyed the family, that I had let Victor poison me against my own mother. Then came the line that made me laugh for the first time in weeks. After everything I sacrificed to bring you into this world, you owe me more than this. I wrote one sentence back. You gave birth to me, but the man you betrayed was the one who became my father. Then I blocked her everywhere. For the first time in my life, my mother had no way to reach me, no son to use, no secret to sell, no family name left to hide behind. I run Caldwell Logistics now, the same company I started at for $14 an hour when I was 19. The same company I stayed in while people who shared my blood used it as a personal bank account. The same company my grandfather spent 40 years building and chose to give to the person he believed had earned it. Not because of blood, because of decisions made every single day. My grandfather knew the truth about my biology and chose me anyway. The same choice my father made the day he decided I was his son. And the woman who had the truth for decades saved it as a weapon and fired it at the worst possible moment for herself. Was it too far? Going public, exposing all of it in front of the board and the partners and the family? I've asked myself that question, honestly. Here's what I come back to. She chose a public room to erase me. She chose witnesses. She chose a moment designed to humiliate me in front of every person whose opinion shaped my professional life. She didn't pull me aside. She didn't call me. She performed it. You don't get a private consequence for a public act. Now I want to know what you would have done. Did I go too far by exposing my own mother in front of the board, the family, and everyone she tried to turn against me? Or did she deserve a public consequence after choosing a public humiliation? And who do you think was the real villain here? Caroline, for saving the truth like a weapon? Preston, for stealing from the company and then throwing his own mother under the bus? Grant, for showing up only when money appeared? Or all of them? Write your answer in the comments. If this ending felt deserved, hit the like button. And if you want more stories about betrayal, dirty secrets, broken loyalty, family greed, and moral payback, subscribe to the channel. Watch another video while you're here. See you in the next videos.